Hello, greetings. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for another one of these editions of Stay Home with Leica from Leica Camera USA and Leica Academy USA. We're so excited to be bringing you this programming straight to your living rooms where people can stay safe and stay home with Leica. So before we get right into it, I want to welcome our guests, but also talk about our ground rules. So just a little bit of housekeeping. If you have questions for our guest, Ruddy Roye, please use the Q&A function in Zoom. Look for that Q&A button. Feel free to share in the chat for some open discussion there. And coming up with our photo challenges and all of our relevant content, please use hashtag #StayHomeWithLeica on social media. And don't forget to follow Leica Academy USA and Leica Camera USA. Now today, we have a really special guest and special program. We titled it The Art of Adaptation. And ultimately, that's because all of us, not just us local, not just us in the US, but people around the globe have had to adapt. This has been a very tricky time, but even so, while many of us, our main sacrifice has been to stay home, there are others who are heeding the call. And that can be healthcare workers who are on the front lines, but also people who are tasked with documenting some of life's most difficult situations. So that brings me to my guest, Ruddy Roye, who is a documentary photographer based in Brooklyn, who is known around the country and around the world, really, for taking photographs of people who usually have voices that go unheard, but he allows them to come to light. And he specializes in environmental portraiture, talking about the communities that these people live in and focusing on them. And he has had to adapt. So we are here to talk to him and see what his latest work is while the COVID-19 pandemic continues, and share with us some insights from him. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Ruddy Roye. And Ruddy, thank you so much for agreeing to do this. Thank you so much for all your work that you've been doing and the fact that you brought us new images to share, which I can't wait to dive into. So thank you again, Ruddy.
Thank you, Antonio, for having me, and thank you, Leica and Leica Academy, Leica USA and Leica Academy, for inviting me to do this
Absolutely. So I want to jump in with our lead image. I think this is I know you have a great story to this one, and it can sing so many stories about everything, about the work you normally do, the work you do around kind of grassroots cultures and urban environments all around the country. But it's so heavily anchored to this moment with what's going on with COVID-19. So what can you tell me about this photo and who we see here?
Lesedi is my South African brother who is also my trumpet teacher. Lesedi Lesedi and I met when he was given to me for my birthday as a birthday lesson, and we've kept in touch. And as soon as we were quarantined, I immediately saw other trumpet players putting up their instruments, especially their second instrument, for sale, because all their gigs were canceled. And as an artist, I know what that feels like. The idea that you have, in a way, you have mortgages, you have food, you have families, you have car payments, and seeing 3-4 months of work disappear. I remember talking to one cat who said, he just lost $10,000. And we might look at that and say, that's in everything that we're talking about, life is the most essential. But yesterday I was talking to a fellow photographer who said his son, this is his son's senior year, and his son said to him, although he knows the gravity of the event, but he has been thinking about winning the state cup ever since he was 7. So there are these different stories, and Lesedi also has a story. And you know, when I got this assignment from Wall Street Journal to photograph social distancing, I reached out to Lesedi to ask him how he was coping and how he was practicing social distancing. And so I went to his house and we made some pictures. And as soon as we sat down, he got a call from somebody on the phone who was offering him loans at a certain percentage. And he shouted out, he immediately shouted out, no, now is not the time. And so Lesedi speaks to what artists, what people, we're talking about all the waiters, we're talking about all the people who depend on the public, an audience for their daily bread. Those are the people who I hear right now that are hurting a lot.
Right. And it's, I mean, it's an amazing photo. It has such gravity. And I'm so glad that it's our lead image and what we're starting with. And the story that you tell around it, it's captivating. And, you know, I think there are so many human moments happening everywhere. And of course, you know, New York is a central hub of all of this. It's unfortunately a very central hub of the outbreak. And it's, you know, the city is having a tough time. But, you know, I'm so glad that you're able to tell these stories in a safe manner and to amplify them. And that leads me to our next image, which is, as you said, you know, it's not just, it's everyday people and it's artists that are suffering. It's not just the service industry. It's everyone suffers in so many different ways.
Yeah, Brian.
And this is a gentleman, he says a dancer, right?
Yeah, Brian is a dancer, a fitness instructor. And again, I reached out to him to ask him how he was coping and how he was practicing social distancing. And I went over to his house, and you can tell, I mean, everybody that I've met, you can tell that there is big, like in the first picture, there is this idea that, you know, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing to get through. But as we talked, as we were photographing, you could feel the angst of the moment. Like, you know, you have to fall victim to the idea that it weighs on you, the idea that you don't know when your next check is coming. And again, we have no idea what this thing is. How do you catch it? We're hearing that you have to be 6 feet away, and now we're hearing that you have to be 27 feet away. There's so much information and so little answers that the last image to me fully captures how we ended up at the end of the shoot, where it was this rage, this outpouring and more so a release of angst, of anger, of misinformation. And so this triptych really speaks to what I think people are going through every day. This idea of, you know, you wake up in the morning and, you know, you're happy to be alive. You're happy that you're healthy. But at the end of the day, it's like you're weighed down with all the pressure of an unknown future. Yeah.
I mean, I think this 3-image sequence is very powerful. You know, it's got a, you know, from a technical aspect, so rich black and white tones, but you know, the as you said, the way it starts calm and in your kind of natural habitat in your home, right, the most personal space that anyone has, and the way it you know, it explodes across this 3-image set, this triptych. Yes, it speaks volumes, and again, thank you. And I think so. While you've been tasked with photographing social distancing, you know, what are some of the moments that you've seen that have been enlightening, you know, from a people perspective? So, for example, this next image, you said you were kind of caught in an interesting situation with this photo.
So I actually one of the first days that we were told to start quarantine, I went down to the World Trade Center. What we know now as the new World Trade Center building. And as I was walking around, I started to look around and noticed that there are no tourists. Like there was an emptiness, a kind of hollowness. And there was this one guy walking his dog, and behind me, there were two homeless guys arguing, they were quarreling. And in that moment, there were some other photographers, and we were just talking about, we're not going there to photograph that, because we do not know if the spit can travel 6 feet or 27 feet. And in that moment, we also start to realize how we're starting to adapt to this new environment. Normally, maybe we would have been down there with a 35 clicking at the interaction between them. But all of us, our first reaction was to be like, okay, long lens time. Like, let's find, if we're gonna document these two guys arguing, let's put on a long lens. Mm-hmm. And so that was the first change that I saw in the way that I'm gonna start documenting what was happening to us now.
Mm-hmm. And is this something that you've had to adapt, right? And this, I think, so then this photo becomes an example of how you've had to change your style of photography, because just even for your own personal safety.
Well, I wrote in the images I just uploaded on my Instagram that normally I use a 24 to a 35 every day. That's my norm. Those are my normals. And that's because I wanted to be as close. I wanted my heart to be as close to the other person's heart, both physically, emotionally, and literally. Like I wanted to be able to watch this person's chest breathe. That's how I photograph. I want to see tension. I want to see calmness. This is a visual experience. It's not just me going in to take a picture. I look at how somebody breathes. Mm-hmm. And so to do this, you have to be close. And so I normally shoot with a 24, anywhere between a 24 millimeter lens and a 50 millimeter lens.
And so you've had to change up your style and
50 to 75. I went out and I bought a new SL so that I could have two different cameras, one with a 35, because I still want to document everything from this angle. This was shot with a 35. And I got an 80 and a 135 for the Leica R. Like I started to put the Leica Rs on my other SL so that I could have that I could create distance between me and the people I'm photographing.
Right. And as I'll keep moving on through the images.
David, the ATR is a wonder.
So now your style, as we say, how you have to adapt. I know your photography and how you have such a personable way of photographing people. You talk to people. You like you said, you want to see people breathe. Has that affected your own creative process then, where you now have to step back? It makes you, now you have to be concerned for your own personal safety. So does your heart long for that style of photographing? Are you trying to just adapt and evolve and just focus on the job at hand?
I think it's early. We're going into our 4th week of mandatory isolation. That was stipulated by the governor. For now, for me, it's trying to figure out what this is. It's still too early, because this is how I describe it. When I go out every day, it feels like how Wales Beach. If you've ever been on a shore where you have seen Pilot Wales Beach, there is this sense of mystery. You have no idea. Doctors, I don't even know who the doctors, what the name of the doctors would be, but they have no idea what has caused these whales to beach. That's what I see when I go out. I see people moving in different ways. The energies are different. Mm-hmm. The way they talk is different. Mm-hmm. Funny enough, I don't hear a lot of people listening to music. I don't see them listening to music. Mm-hmm. I don't see a lot of earpods, and it's different.
Wow.
I hear a lot of sirens that go back and forth on through. I either see clumps of people hanging out together, or I see people sliding around each other as if we're eels. Like if I'm walking in a straight line and this person, maybe for some reason I don't see them, you'll see them move like an eel around me. It's a very disconcerting atmosphere, you know, to walk in the street. It's very,
Right.
I mean, as I said, there are two types of New Yorkers. There are ones that are armed with masks and gloves, and there are others who seemingly don't take it as seriously.
Right. Yeah, and we have, I mean, you have images that show a variety of subjects, and I think that actually you brought up a great point about New Yorkers. I think anyone that's local to New York knows how people usually walk in New York and how it's always hustle and bustle, and
Right.
you're always shoulder to shoulder with people. And now, you know, you have so many moments where people are keeping separate, and then you have situations like this, where this moment of respite, almost normalcy, I would say.
Right. Well, these are people at Wingate Park in Brooklyn, a famous park where entertainers come to perform in Brooklyn, and they're actually spaced out 6 feet apart, going around the track.
Mm-hmm.
And interspersed are runners running on the other side of them. So yes, they're actually committing to their 6 feet and stretching as they go around the track.
Right.
So for me, this is our new normal for now.
Yeah, and it's mind-boggling that, but you know, again, we all know it's necessary, but you know, there's the human element of, you know, people will do their best to make it work for them, though we all know that one of the healthiest ways is to stay safe and stay home. But there are people who are, you know, workers, like you mentioned, that are essential, people who have to then, you know, wait in lines because they have to get essentials.
Right.
You know, whether you go to the pharmacy or you have to go to the grocery store, especially, you know, for elderly folks, you know, maybe the young go for them to take care of it. And I think you've done, you know, obviously an amazing job capturing some of these moments. But, you know, I think you've also showed a lot of workers and people who are essential. And I love this image. If you want to, feel free to jump in and you know, the lines.
Yeah, I just saw this guy. My father was a surveyor,
Mm-hmm.
and in a lot of my images, I always throw him in there. Like this is how I grew up seeing him do this. So I was on Fifth Avenue in Manhattan, and I saw this guy recording using a tape measure to record the distance between the two sides of the pedestrian crossing. And you know, it was, you know, I asked him, you know, why, and he said, you know, I have to work. You know, we're still working. So I know there are people out there that still go to work and try to do it safely.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he had his mask and his gloves on, but he was working.
Yeah, and it's something that's just it's very unreal. You know, we as like kind of outsiders looking in, sometimes we wonder like who is really essential. But you know, if you're told you have to work, you have to work. And you know, I think you again capture these moments. People are taking the measures to protect themselves, but at the same time, they in some cases have to be out there.
I mean, if you think about, I mean, a window washer, where is he going to get money? I mean, if he has a family to feed, where is he going to get money? He has to go out there, even to brave the idea, to risk the idea of getting ill. And you know, and I find that a lot of people never discuss race. But race for me is in everything. And this to me, part of some of the underlying themes that I photograph is this idea that coming here as slaves and then being free, there were no concessions made. There were no concessions given to us where jobs were concerned. We had to go out and fend for ourselves. And over the years, we have been fending for ourselves. And I remember photographing a guy in Cleveland a month ago, it was snowing. And I asked him, why are you out here selling hot dogs in the snow? It was snowing. And he said to me, when you do not make enough money in the summer, this is what you have to do in the winter. And I feel like it's the same for this window washer. Like he has to be here. Like there is no, I mean, and we have, I've known throughout the years that our ancestors have taken risk in order to put food on our table. And when I look at this image, for me, it fell within those same lines of, we have to find work at all costs.
Yeah. And it's quite profound. It's the need to work and the need to do what you have to do to get by, even when the times are tough. So you know, I just want to actually take a slight aside. It's all very heavy topics, I know, and you know, while we're always seeking inspiration in something uplifting, but you know, these are the times, and you are one of many out there that are bringing the light to what's going on. And you are our eyes, essentially, you know, like photojournalists in the US and around the globe are, you know, what we allow us to see on the front lines and out in the everyday neighborhoods that have, you know, are rocked by this ongoing pandemic. So as a quick aside, I know I see people are asking questions in the Q&A, and there's some chatter going on in the chat. Thank you so much, everyone. And please keep it coming. If you've got questions in the chat, feel free to throw them over into the Q&A. And I know people are already asking you, so we can maybe get this one out of the way. This is an easy one. What camera you're using for these pictures, and what lenses you've been sticking to?
I'm using only the monochrome and a 35 1.4 Sumilux, the generation before this last one.
Gotcha. Okay. So I mean, explains why everything's in black and white and everything looks as luscious and great as it does, of course. Although, you know, we're streaming, so maybe it isn't doing quite the fidelity that camera deserves. But yeah, let's move on. You know, I think we have these great examples of workers that have to continue doing their craft. You know, the people who, you know, have to go to work. Whether they are, you know, from the government or just for services that are essential to everyday lives. So it's really interesting, and some, you know, so many things as basic that we take for granted as the mail coming every day or 6 days a week.
I love her. I love her. Like, she's here, always here.
And did you, like, now when you point your camera at people normally, I know that you're used to being anywhere and everywhere and photographing almost anyone and having a conversation with them and engaging them. Are you seeing a difference now when you point your camera? I saw someone mention this in the chat, so I'll give a shout out if I see your name again. But do you see a difference now when people are having their picture taken while these things are ongoing, while they have a mask on and they're out and about?
There are two things that happen, and over the years I have learned how to read a face that does not want to be photographed, and so I'm not going to photograph that person. I've always felt that there's no picture that I need. My life is not. I mean, like, my life is not going to be built on one picture, and that's a choice that I've made. However, because of the distance, it doesn't feel like, a lot of people might not even know that I'm there. Like, there's some people that I would wait, and because I'm there for such a long time, like, there's an image that's going to come up where there was an older guy. He might be, I don't know where he is. I'll mention him when we get there. An older guy that was washing his car, and he said to me that he was 71 years old, and he knows, he has been listening to the news of the age group that's susceptible or easily, I don't know the word,
vulnerable, sensitive to the disease. Yeah.
Right. And but something as tedious and as everyday as washing his car, it wasn't about water. It was about, he was using Windex, and he was just going out. He said it takes his mind off the craziness, the idea of not getting any money, the idea of of not knowing when it's going to be over. Like, it takes his mind off it. So I was able to have a conversation with him because I stood there waiting for something else to happen while he was wiping down his car.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody did pass to his right, not wearing a mask, and his next words was, "That is what I'm afraid of." That people don't care about the fact that he's vulnerable. He's in that vulnerable category.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very difficult, and ultimately in these times we have to then look out for each other, you know.
Right.
And I think, and you are doing your part by letting us see, and then also now you are self-quarantining. Am I right?
Yes.
So because you have to consider for your own family's safety,
Right.
and for your safety.
Which is why yesterday I spoke to a photographer who was asking me about images that were coming out of the hospitals that are close to me, and I said, you know, somebody else, I mean, somebody who's single can go take those images. I'm not. I mean, like, I'm not saying that I would never, but it's not. I'm not greedy. Like, I'm not gonna put my wife and 2 kids through any kind of risk just because I want to make images. It's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, like, these images, I'm still trying to figure out how to make these images less strange to me, because this is not how I photograph.
Right.
And so, as much as I like the genre of street portraiture or street photographs, they still feel, in a sense, disconnected from how I shoot. Here, a woman was trying to figure out if she could wash her clothes, and the guy was saying, giving her the criterias. You know, she has to come in here gloved, face mask. She has to bring Purell or some way of wiping down every machine that she used while he goes behind her and do it. So he was actually giving her some kind of criteria that he has been using so that he can continue to do business.
Mm-hmm. And when you took this photo or some of these other photos, like, do you feel safe? Do you take the picture and run off?
I am not going to go close.
Yes,
I am not.
You have to keep your distance. Yeah.
I am going to keep my distance. And so if the images look like that, that's what it is. I am not going to put myself in any at any undue risk. While I was photographing the social distancing images, it was easy because everybody knew why I was there. Everybody knew that when I walked in to go at a distance. So while I moved around in the room and I figured out where my picture was, here's how I adapt. Normally, I would shift around a room. I would see an image by the window. I would see an image on a sofa. I would see an image. No, I walked in there. I saw an image. It was an image that I could take safely. Mm-hmm. I shot it. I was gone.
Yeah. And you know, do you have those moments though where, I mean, do you regret if you missed something, or it just gotta, like you said, just move on?
No regrets.
I know. Well, that's Ruddy. That's the way you live your life, I think, right?
Yep. I wish this picture was better. Like, I wish he was better composed, but I'm like, nah, like, because there is such an uncertainty between, you don't know who has the virus, one. Mm-hmm. You don't know how close is too close. So there's all this static, and there's this energy, this don't go too close, but I feel like I should be closer to get this image. Mm-hmm. If I miss it, next one. Mm-hmm. That's how I feel.
I gotcha. I think that Ruddy, I think hopefully when we're all through this sooner than later, but you know, as long as it takes, I think, you know, your photography is gonna have like almost a reemergence and a new blossoming when you get close again to people, and when you get to, you know, make such amazing photos as you're making now, but in hopefully what is a much more positive light. and a more enjoyable experience for you, what you're normally used to.
One of the beautiful things that came out of, has been happening though, is the going back to the camera. Like, oh, so now I have to learn something else about this camera so that I'm able to do what I'm doing efficiently. So it has been, there's this coming back to, so I've been using both SLs, but one with a, no, I had one with a 50 Noctilux and everything else M. And because I wanted to be able to move a lot faster, I had to sit down with the SL and relearn the R's, what I could get from them, the color, the texture. The 80 is not as sharp, but with the SL focus peaking, I can get in there like it's been a come back to the camera, sit with them kind of moment. So it's been good. I've always enjoyed being in school, like learning. Every friend that really knows me know that I like to be in my head. I like to learn. I like to be learning something new every day. So
yeah. So I think it's really, it's actually, it's amazing to hear of you speaking of always learning every day. I think we can all take solace in that because we know how amazing your work is and how accomplished you are. It's always refreshing to hear that everyone's always learning every day.
There was a guy who sent me a note this morning. He said, "How do you get to where you are?" And my answer to him was, "You got to keep pushing." And then I said to him, "If you look right beside you, I'm standing right beside you." Because he thinks that I'm up there. And I'm like, no. I'm still pushing. I'm right beside you. And it became this nice little joke on DM. Like I've never seen myself as have reached a place. I'm still trying to get there, is how I see myself.
Yeah. That's great to hear, Ruddy. And I think your photographs also in this case, in this such a tough situation, they are also showing people, look, the truth is we are seeing people who are disenfranchised. We are seeing people who have it tough. And we also see how they have to keep pushing in their own ways. And, you know, it can be tragic in a lot of times and in a lot of ways now. It can actually, you know, we know that there's a lot of tragedy going on right now, but it's amazing to hear you, and it's uplifting to think of just push, and we can push through it, and as a greater community and as a country, as a planet, we can get through it. You know, that seems always the general sentiment from you know, leadership, is how we can get through this. And you know, it's then I think these photographs that you make and so many photographs being taken in these situations will live on as a testament to what we have overcome. So we've shown some images of workers, people who are essential, people who we see businesses that are struggling. You know, I think it's and it's in the best interest, of course, though, of not just workers, of employees, but also family and everyone around, that these businesses now have to temporarily close. I was wondering though, like you're on assignment for these images, and you of course also photograph. You photograph every day. You photograph even when you're not on assignment. What do you look for in an image, in these images when you're on assignment? And then what are you looking for on the other end for yourself?
Can we go back 5 images?
Sure. Give me one.
One more.
One more.
So I'm looking for these images.
Yeah.
I'm looking for, again, I say this a lot. There's always a piece of me in every image. The idea that my grandmother could be the one walking to social service. I mean, obviously there's nobody at her house that she can send to the Social Security Administration to first find out that it is closed. I wish people could see that there's a big closed sign on it. So wherever she's coming from, she had to walk on that walker with her glove and mask to find out that it is closed. That's one. So that's what I look for. Like, I look for the next image is a guy that I've always seen on Bushwick. He's on Bushwick every day. If you happen to drive on Bushwick, and in my mind, I'm like, how does social service understand there are people like him out there who need a glove and a mask?
Mm-hmm.
How do we reach a face like this?
Mm-hmm.
And so to answer your question, I'm constantly aware that there are people who are less fortunate, who we have to be more vigilant about how we think about how they're getting by.
Yeah.
Like, and I think this is a lesson I learned from my mom, who was always concerned about what she called the shut-ins. And shut-ins in her church were members of her church who could not make it to church anymore. So my mom would organize to make sure that on Saturday and Sunday, especially because Monday to Friday was really busy, that they had dinner. Whether soup on Saturday, rice and peas and chicken on Sunday. And she would call up all her church sisters, and they would cook, put the food together, put them in their cars, and drive to these people's house. So I'm always thinking about people who are less fortunate, people who can't come down the 4 flights of stairs anymore to get to social service. So those are essentially those are the images I look for first. Then there's always me trying to understand me. That sounds very narcissistic, but I believe that if I use somebody else's story to tell my story, then I don't come off as narcissistic. And so I'm always looking for how I grew up, how I became a man, how I lived as a man, and all of these are my troubles, and how am I pitching this to have that Hollywood ending. So those are, every day I go out. Mm-hmm. Different from my assignment. Every day I go out, I am looking to see how the people around me live their lives. How does it mirror my life, and how can I tell that story?
Yeah. And I think, I don't think, honest, to be candid with you, I don't think there's anything narcissistic about that at all. I think, we always imprint a bit of ourselves into the photographs we make, and your signature style speaks so much of who you are. And I think that, you're a heart on your sleeve kind of guy, and, it comes through in your photography. Now, I want to add to that, though. I know the topic is heavy. The times are tricky, and these photographs are tough. I want to just ask a quick question, though, that I'm getting from the chat. Are you photographing anything else on the side, like a personal project that can almost kind of be like the palette cleanser, or something to kind of take your mind off of this heavy content that you see when you're photographing?
So the first assignment I took during this isolation was an assignment about how my sons were adapting to school at home. Mm-hmm. And it was the first time I've ever turned my lens on my family. Mm-hmm. I had, other than birthdays or little events, I never think about photographing my family for a serious assignment. And so that was kind of a sniffing up the coffee beans when you're in a perfume store kind of moment. The social distancing story felt different because, again, it's in my wheelhouse. I am reaching out to people who part of their story is, I am struggling. Like, I don't know how I'm going to pay rent. And, even today, I got a friend who sent me a letter saying that the owners are asking them for their rent. Mm-hmm. And she hasn't worked in 3 weeks. And so I was able to still be in a space where I'm listening to somebody talk to me about what they're going through, and still make this image about social distancing. The fact that you have to, in order to preserve your family, the health of your family, you still have to practice self-isolation. So although it might seem heavy, but part of how I grew up around storytellers. And so I love to be in a space where I'm telling a story. For like this one that we're looking at, even though the guy whose shirt that says, I can't read it so tiny.
The "In God We Trust," blessed.
In God We Trust. Everybody else was wearing masks. And the one guy with his hand on his chest was saying that he does feel, you know, a little pain. And so everybody was like giving him the, do you have the thing? Right. But here's this one guy he had no mask on. He was like, in God we trust.
Yeah, it's again adds to the heft of the situation, and you know, where you know, but at the same time you still see some people, like you said, without masks, kind of just out and about still.
Right. So this was a medical center on Myrtle. I think it's called Asiso, where people were coming to be tested, or to talk about their symptoms, and somebody would come outside and ask him what the symptoms they were feeling, and there were people without masks walking through the area, and in my mind I'm thinking, if I'm coming to a urgent care or a facility to ask about my symptoms, I must be feeling something, and yet there are people walking through there like I don't know. So for me, these are the parts where I'm just like, it's baffling to me. Like it's unexplainable. It's unfathomable for me to see this.
Right. Yeah. And we see this, you know, I mean, again, the you know, you can't control what everyone does, but you have to play it safe for everyone because it's for the sake of your family and theirs.
But I also understand this, that there are people that I know. I mean, I just got a box of gloves and masks sent to me. Before that, the Wall Street Journal supplied me with masks and gloves and Purell, so that I could do my job. But outside of that, because you know each mask lasts 11 hours supposedly. I mean, a friend had to send me a box of gloves and masks from Canada. Like, there's no, I mean, New Yorkers walking around without access to masks and gloves. And I see my son started to use his bandana to make masks. But again, if you're walking around outside with anything on your face, are you coming home to wash it? Because all you did was you made all that mask, the barrier between you. Did you wash it when you come home? Did you wash it off? Or are you gonna put it back on? And hopefully you didn't put it on the other side in.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's just all this stuff. It's all this misinformation or lack of information that I look outside and I go, I have to go look at it. I have to go photograph it.
Yeah, and you photographed, like, you know, you see empty streets, mostly empty. You know, you hope that people who are out and about are there because they really have to be. You know, and you know, there's always the argument that some people are going to you know, try to keep some kind of normalcy in their life.
Here's the image.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Here's the image of the guy washing his car.
Ah, yes, yeah. And as you said, he's in that that more sensitive or vulnerable age bracket.
But do you notice where she is? Do you see? Because she thinks being as close to the rail as possible. But we don't know. We don't know how stuff is traveling. We don't know.
Yeah, and there's an interesting, you know, for composition wise, the dichotomy here of, you know, older gentleman with the mask, younger woman without, and it's an amazing composition and contrast. In addition to the tones and everything that you captured here, it's remarkable. And again, I think your vision comes through on so many of these photographs, and all of them. And then then I want to turn to this one, which I know I love our lead image. I love the triptych that we've showed. So many of these photographs. This one, I'll be honest with you, Ruddy, kind of stopped me in my tracks when you first sent it to me, when we put it in here. Is there an interesting story that you could tell us about this one?
So this is a good friend of mine, and there's actually another picture. There's a picture of him. His neighbor walked out, and he has two brothers that are positive. One is in the hospital, and I think one is at home, but not completely recovered. And I just went to check up on him, because I also know that he had a kidney transplant a couple of years ago. So, you know, one of the things I've wanted to do since, believe it or not, since Kobe died, was I wanted to be closer to the people that I consider to be close in my life. So I've been doing that. I've been trying to reach out to people more. And so I rode around to Marvin, and this other neighbor came out, like whole family, nobody with mask. Baby, mommy, daddy with a stroller, and another little baby, no mask. And so Marvin and I were, Marvin's look is like this, like he's like we're dumbfounded. 3 weeks in, we're supposed, according to the news, if we're listening to the news, we're about to hit our apex. And a whole family is coming out without masks.
Yeah.
So for me, these, I want to document it.
Yeah, and that brings me to this other photo, which there's something about the way that they're staring out. Can you? And I know you have again. It's funny. I joke with you that I think I always assume that you know every single person in every photo you take, because that's the kind of photographer that you are. You get to know everyone. You get to tell their story. Their story comes through in the visuals, and then you fill in the rest with what you say, whether your captions on Instagram or your spoken word on whatever platform. So this one is another really striking one.
So Basit is somebody I photographed. Basit is the person in the front. Els is his partner. Basit does not use the he, she gender, so forgive me, Basit, if he's watching, and I'm getting used to it. Both are non-binary, and I remember photographing them for the Wall Street Journal article. I was supposed to meet them upstairs, and I couldn't get them on the phone. So I sat in my van and I waited for them. And they were coming back from grocery. So obviously their phones, they're not going to touch their phones. And I just stopped them in the middle of the street, put up my light, some Pro Photo lights, and I shot them with the SL and the 80 millimeter. So it was from a distance. And the next day, I looked on the Instagram, and they had a picture just like this that had a caption about the new normal. And I said to them, I need to photograph that same image. And so I went to their house and I photographed this image, because it says everything about, I can't tell you how many people I've watched look out their window this same way. This idea of what is coming. What does 1 year from now look like? What is the new future? And it was just a beautiful moment that I wanted to capture. And so the next day I photographed, I did some portraits for Wall Street Journal, but I also did this image because I wanted it to be something that spoke to the end of, if there's an end, the end of what this is gonna be for us. So
it's amazing, Ruddy, and yeah, thank you again for sharing and sharing the story of them. So we have an immense amount of questions, and I think it speaks volumes to to how compelling you are and how amazing a storyteller that you are. So I'm gonna try and we've been triaging them. So again, thank you everyone for submitting questions. I'm gonna start with one that I see here. So how are you taking care of your own emotional health while in the middle of this, and what advice do you have for other working journalists?
My emotional health. You know, I'm very introspective, but I think I'm also the type of person that I have friends who I reach out to every day, who reach out to me every day. That through conversation, there's this idea of bloodletting. We let it out.
Mm-hmm.
Trumpet. I've been playing the trumpet for the past 7 months, and listening to trumpet music and practicing allows the energy to go. What is my advice? What would be my advice? My advice would be, if there is, and there's a huge if there's a way to photograph safely, and you feel that you must, I think there's no greater therapy than to take an image, go back and look at it, and see where it fits within the annals of this new normal.
Yeah. That new normal is a scary term sometimes, you know, but
Coltrane is amazing. Whoever said that.
Coltrane. I agree. Man, and you mentioned trumpet. You mentioned music can be our escape, right? So some great questions in the Q&A. So I wanted to ask this one. So do you believe that journalists in general, visual journalists like yourself, are properly communicating the prevalence of COVID hitting people of color in high percentages during this pandemic? How do you? I mean, you touched on it a little bit. It speaks to your normal work in terms of giving voice to the unheard. Do you see maybe a difference in your voice and what you're presenting here, the work we've seen here, the work you presented for time.com, and then maybe some other work that's out there, what people are usually seeing?
I don't think we're capable of presenting the kind of work that would represent the true aspect of how African Americans, people of color, are experiencing COVID-19 right now. Partly because we can't go there. Like, the way I would photograph it would be, I'd be in everybody's house. Because in that house, I know that there are no gloves, there are no masks. Because one, maybe we don't have access. All the masks and gloves were out the shelves by the second week. All. Mm-hmm. Food. What are you eating? I know that a lot of spaces, the prices have gone up. Part of these things, I mean, money doesn't really mean much. It would be nice to have money, but if you can't find the stuff to buy, what good is money? So I know that personally, I have yet to even touch the surface of what people of color in my neighborhood, just right here, are going through. We're not talking about medical services. We're not talking about, because also there's this huge fear factor. The idea that if we go to the hospital, you might get sick. You might, even if you're not, I mean, so flu, if you're feeling any flu symptoms, are you going to run the risk of going to the hospital and actually contracting the virus? I mean, there's so many thoughts going around. But I know for a fact that one of the things that is maybe stopping somebody like me is the fact that I just don't want to walk up into somebody's house, ill-prepared in all aspects, and bring something back to my family.
Mm-hmm.
That is what stops, I think, a lot of people. And I'm not saying that the virus exists more in the homes of people of color, but just today, the statistics show that people of color were experiencing death or sickness 76% more than any other group. So, yeah.
Yeah. And so again, we've got so many questions. I know we won't be able to get to every single question, but thank you, everyone. And, you know, Ruddy, it wasn't actually very long ago that things felt kind of what we would have called normal, and the normal that I think many of us hope to return to. You know, so you've had to do this very quick, almost like whiplash of how you photographed, say, a month ago and how you photograph now. So I've seen a few questions. I'm kind of combining a few of them together. You know, so how have you, we talked a little bit about how you had to adapt and how you changed from the technical perspective. Are you also, you know, cleaning your gear, you know, disinfecting and using protective gear? Perfect. So I know that covers kind of the technical aspect and the gear aspect, but how have you also dealt with this whiplash? I think maybe your time.com you know, expose or photos of your family maybe helped. What do you see as, you know, the how to cope with that whiplash, right?
Well, for me, it was more like a whip. The lash we've yet to see. Whip in the sense that it wasn't a hard transition. I have always been attracted to stories first.
Mm-hmm.
So while some people, like I have, like, to me, Ben Lowy is one of the, Ben Lowy, Alex Webb. They are virtuosos where composition and angles and color is concerned. They do things in images that I try not to do because that's not my wheelhouse. I actually see a story.
Mm-hmm.
And I try to find that story in the image. So the image is actually a background to the foreground. The foreground for me is a story. Mm-hmm. What is the story? And so the whiplash was more like whip, okay. So now the story is different. The story is either distance and what is going on, as opposed to the person. So all I did was to go, how can I tell this story differently? And that transition wasn't so far-fetched because I am still doing stories. I'm still thinking about the story as opposed to the image.
Absolutely, and I think your stories speak volumes. The stories that you then echo and that you amplify for people across the country, across the world, and now in these times, especially whether across New York City, people going through troubling times and uncertain times are so necessary that people like you are out there to do your part and tell their stories for the greater good of all of us. So we thank you, Ruddy. And I want to then transition over to where people can see Ruddy's work. I wanted to call out extra attention, not just to your website and to your Instagram, but you had the story you touched on briefly, the time.com article titled "The Achievement Gap is More Glaring Than Ever for Students Dealing with School Closures," which features your photos that you mentioned of your family, correct?
Yes.
And go ahead.
The Wall Street Journal is coming up with a story on social distancing. I sent the images in yesterday, so, and it's sometime. There's some interesting stories. I photographed 2 people who contracted COVID-19. Both of them with families. One was a single mom, the other had her family. And what that felt like having to negotiate that space.
Mm-hmm. Great. I mean, I'm really looking forward to seeing the Wall Street Journal article and seeing more of your photos, Ruddy. But in the meantime, I cannot thank you enough for being our guest, for sharing these images, sharing your perspective. I know it's heavy topics and it's tough times, but in some ways, I personally find you bring some levity to it because you know, to see it through your eyes is, I think, a gift that many of us are thankful for. So again, I thank you, Ruddy. Thank you for your time. I want to call attention to, for everyone here, thank you for your questions. Thank you for your feedback. We really appreciate it. I know there were so many more questions than we can have time for, but we're glad to get them all from you. We've got more programming coming up. We have April 9th will be the next one, Inspiration Found with Doug Menuet. April 12th, we have another webinar called Home Renewal, a conversation with Jennifer McClure and Cristobal Cobo. We will also be having Instagram live interviews from our Leica stores and gallery accounts. So please keep an eye out. Follow us at Leica Academy USA and at Leica Camera USA. And we also have part of the hashtag Stay Home with Leica programming, a photo challenge. So this week, we already started it on Sunday, but share a family moment or daily ritual with the hashtag Stay Home with Leica. And we will be announcing a winner on April 11th. So again, we have all kinds of programming coming up, and you can use this quick link to find it all. Ready?
Thank you, Antonio. Thank you, Kieran. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Yvette.
Thank you, Ruddy. We really appreciate it. And thank you, everyone. And everyone, stay safe, you know, stay healthy, and we'll be in touch with these great programs and more great photographers like you, Ruddy, to enlighten us. So thank you, everyone, and we'll be in touch soon.